Good morning to all the participants. Our today's speaker is Sanjay Bhattacharya ji, past convener of Use Exchange Arthi Jhawar ji, my co-convener Sarosh Swaikar ji, and all the participants. A very warm welcome to today's webinar on tax audit compliance. Friends, we know that we have entered into a phase where our audit has already started for the FY 1920, and soon we have to start filling up our tax audit compliance forms and also start submitting it to the Government of India. We don't have much time period left for the same. To my knowledge, I don't think there are much changes, but still a lot of introspection is required into what we are filling up, how it is getting uploaded in the income tax forms, how the department is expecting us that in which column which needs to be filled up. Because in last seminars also we have found that a lot of figures are being reported in wrong columns, which is invariably being cited by the CBDT while processing the returns, and demands are being raised. We also know that this tax audit which we fill up is also is getting compared with the income tax return which we are filing, and specific disallowances are also being reported in ITR as well as in our tax audit reports. So a synchronization between both ITR and tax audit is important. So we need to understand all the columns of tax audit report very specifically, where we should report, what we should report, and how we should report. We have a very learned speaker with us, Sanjay Bhattacharya ji with us. First of all, today being a Saturday, we thought to be a lockdown, but anyways, our West Bengal government has withdrawn the same. But still, this session will be very important for all of us. It's a specific request that during the meeting, keep yourself muted so that we can have a voice clarity. And also, it's requested if all the audiences can note down their questions during the seminar, and we can take up in question and answer round so that the speaker does not get impacted during his flow of lectures. uh, Rest Sanjay Bhattacharya ji, when he'll start, he can always say that how he wants to proceed. I would request my co-convener Sarosh Swaikar ji to kindly introduce him in front of our speakers. Over to you, Sarosh ji.
Thank you, Naveen. Sanjay sir, good morning and a very warm welcome from all of us.
Good morning. Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar. It's very wonderful time that we are having you with ourselves, and the topic is also a hot topic, which is very interesting. I take the opportunity to introduce Sanjay sir. He is born in the year 1949, and he is a BSc with honors in chemistry. He is also a qualified LLB and an FCA. He is practicing as a chartered accountant since 1979. He is presently practicing in the name of his partnership concern Sukumar Bhattacharya and Company, and he is based in Calcutta. He was a former lecturer with S.A. Jaipuria College, Kolkata. He is associated with several professional organizations and chambers of commerce. Now, sir, I request you to share your deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, good morning to all persons who are attending this session. My thanks to Views Exchange Chartered Accountants Study Circle for giving me an opportunity of sharing my thoughts. I remember that about 2 weeks back, along with EIRC of the ICI, Views Exchange was also a co-host of the program. And it's an important program for us, for all chartered accountants who are assigned with tax audit works. Friends, what I propose, subject to agreement by the host, that I will speak for about 80 minutes, when I will go through some of, not all the issues, some of the issues of 3CA and 3CD, of course 3CB also, and thereafter whatever time will be left, that can be utilized for questions, answers. Those questions should come through the host, and I shall try my best to answer them. So I am going straight away to this subject. Friends, till day before yesterday, I have checked, there has not been any changes made in forms 3CA, 3CB or 3CD. That means the last changes that had been made with effect from 20th August 2018, it has remained the same. So whatever we will discuss and whatever we as chartered accountants and tax auditors will have to perform are to be on the basis of the form that is available with effect from 20th August 2018. Specifically, two particular serial numbers. Let me also tell you one thing. These numbers that are appearing in form number 3CD are not clauses, are not items. Those are being referred by CBDT as serial numbers. Because when they made the amendments, they wrote in their amending notification that this serial number will be amended and this serial number will be inserted. So whenever I am also going to refer it, I am mentioning as serial number, not as clause number, because there is nothing like clause in 3CD. Kindly note that. Now, as already notified by the government, and which is aware, which everyone should be aware, that serial numbers 30C and 44, though in their notification they have mentioned this as clause 30C and clause 44 of form 3CD, one is regarding the applicability of GAAR, that is General Anti-Avoidance Rule, and the other is relating to the details of GST. Those are not to be filled in by the tax auditor for the assessment year 2020-21 also. So those two are not our subject for this year at least. Now, coming to the fundamental things, that is section 44AB, two particular things I just want to bring to your kind attention, though I am sure that if not all, most of the chartered accountants who are doing tax audits for a number of years are aware of it. The first one is this. From this year, that means from assessment year 2020-21, an amendment has been made in section 44AB, that is the regarding threshold limit requiring the tax audit for businesses. What had been there as per up to assessment year 1920 was like this, that if the business turnover, whatever they call business turnover, gross receipts, the wording is like that, total sales, turnover or gross receipts in business exceeds rupees 1 crore, then the tax audit is required for businesses. By way of a proviso, it was mentioned, it has been mentioned that if an assessee carrying on a business follows the presumptive tax procedure as per section 44AD, then in his case, the threshold limit of 1 crore is enhanced to rupees 2 crore. Those were there in assessment year 1920 also. From 2021, a change has been made. Please hear carefully, if you have not noticed it, that what enhancement has been done, it is mentioned in this way, that in case of a business, if the total receipts, mind it, total receipts, in this section they have mentioned it like this, aggregate of all amounts received, including amount received for sales, turnover or gross receipt during the previous year in cash, does not exceed 5%. Here one has to keep in mind that when we are going to see that whether that particular assessee falls in the category of this new relaxation, what we have to see that all receipts during the year we have to take into account. That means it is not only business income receipts, it can be loan receipts, it can be capital receipts, whatever may be there. Then there is no limit of that. Whatever will be the total receipts during the year, we have to see that whether cash receipts out of that exceeded 5% of that total receipts. If it has exceeded 5%, then this relaxation will not be there. But if the total cash receipts is less than 5% of the total receipts during the year, then the limit of 1 crore as mentioned in 44AB will be enhanced to rupees 5 crore. That means in that case, the total sales, turnover or gross receipt, if it has not exceeded rupees 5 crore, then there will not be any requirement of tax audit for that particular year. This is one issue I just wanted to mention. The second one, it's not new one. It has been there with effect from assessment year 2017-18. It is regarding clause small d, not small d, sorry, small e of section 44AB. It says, because some of us may have this wrong idea, that's what I want to clear. Some may be also still thinking that if a person, not being a company of course, if the turnover is less than 2 crore of rupees during a year, and that particular assessee does not offer presumptive income under section 44AD, then he is compulsorily required to get his accounts tax audited. This is wrong. What this clause small e of section 44 says, that if there be an assessee who has once exercised option for presumptive tax under section 44AD, and thereafter for any of the 5 subsequent years, that particular assessee does not follow the procedure as per section 44AD, then that clause is covered under subsection 4 of section 44AD. For that particular assessee, there will be a compulsory tax audit. It is not that everyone will be subject to tax audit even if the turnover is less than 1 crore of rupees. It is not. So we have to understand that whenever we see that a person has turnover less than 1 crore, then we have to check up whether that particular assessee has ever exercised option under 44AD. If he has exercised under 44AD, that option, and thereafter for any year he has not exercised that option, then there will be compulsory tax audit, not for everyone. This point must be clear with us so that the clients may not think that just for gaining some tax audit fees, we are forcing them to get their accounts tax audited. We must be sure that where there is a real requirement of tax audit. So these 2 fundamental things I just want to mention, and there is a third one. But unlike the business, for professions, if any professional does not offer under 44ADA, even though his gross receipts during the year is less than 50 lakh of rupees, then there will be a compulsory tax audit. In fact, up to assessment year 2016-17, the position was similar for business and profession. But with effect from 17-18, for the businesses, they have made a different type of concept. This is as regard the fundamental things of tax audit that I wanted to share with you. Then comes the due date. With effect from assessment year 2021, the due date for uploading the form 44A, uploading the tax audit report has been made 30th September. That means it is like earlier years. But the return filing date was extended up to 31st October. In view of COVID-19, for this particular year, assessment year, the tax audit report furnishing has been extended up to 31st of October till now, and return filing is up to 30th November. We don't know whether there will be more extension or not, because we are aware that several representations have been made to the Central Board of Direct Taxes. I have gone through one of the petitions made by All India Federation of Tax Practitioners, stating that there should be some more extension. Till certain more extension is made, we have to follow that by 31st of October, this tax audit report has to be uploaded and the returns have to be uploaded by 30th of November. And as I am going to the forms now, friends, we have to sign 3CA or 3CB, which is to be accompanied by form number 3CD in both the cases. In 3CA, we must have, everybody must have noticed what we have to certify. There we have to certify like this, that whatever particulars are given in form number 3CD are true and correct. It is not true and fair. In case of 3CB, there are two parts, because 3CB is nothing but a complete audit. There the first part is regarding the normal audit, where it has to be certified, that it has to be reported that the accounts are true and fair. The balance sheet, profit and loss account are showing true and fair view. But in the second part, when you come to this 3CD, there also it is true and correct. That we have to keep in mind. There is a difference between fair and correct. Fair means it is judgment type of thing. But when you certify something as correct, that means we are telling it is factually correct. We can't say it was estimated. This is one issue. And second, in both 3C and 3CA and 3CB, there is a specific space available in those forms where we as tax auditors are to give like this, that in our opinion and to the best of our information, and according to examination of books of account, including other relevant documents, mind it, according to examinations of books of account and books of account, including other relevant documents and explanations given to us, the particulars given in the said form 3CD are true and correct, subject to the following observations and qualifications. This subject to the observations and qualifications are very, very important for the tax auditors. This is the place where we can express our views, including the disclaimers. There is no way by which we can make any disclaimer in the forms. This is the only place. Whatever we think that these are given subject to our remarks, those can be given only here. Here, when you open the form, online form, there you will find that they have got, all this fixed, what type of observations or qualifications may be made. But at last, there is one others. So under this others, whatever we think we should give here, we can always write, and we should also write there. I'm giving an example, like in some of the in giving reporting some of the serial numbers, we have to write that these have been done on test checking. That has to be mentioned here. There are certain other items when I go serial number wise, then I will mention. This is the place which will save us from any proceeding that may be initiated in future for any unintended professional negligence. Here we should disclose on what basis we have carried out our tax audit. So be careful about it. Don't leave it like that. The tax auditor must utilize this space to the maximum as required in a particular tax audit work. Saying all these things, I am going to now the form number 3CD. There are 44 serial numbers or clauses, whatever you call. And under these 44 serial numbers, there are several sub-serial numbers. So if you total up how many reportings we have to do, it is more than 70 if I am correct. All these serial numbers have to be written. Particularly one serial number I just want to mention here, that is 11 small c. 11 small c. This required our reporting of list of books of account and nature of relevant documents examined. Friends, this particular serial number we should fill in at the last. We should not write anything against this 11 small c during our reporting, but only at the last. That means after we reach number 44, then only we shall come back here. Why I am telling it? This requires us to mention what books of accounts we have checked, as well as the nature of relevant documents examined. Now, you are aware that it is not only the cash book, ledger or journal that gives us all the required information. I'm giving you some example. We have to report at one place what are the amounts of brought forward losses or unabsorbed depreciation. Can I report it without checking the income tax return or assessment order? No. We have to report in case of a unlisted company that whether there has been a change of shareholding. Can we report it without checking the shareholding register? No. We have to report the dates of deposits of employees' provident fund contributions. We have to check the PF register. We have to report about the TDS compliances and also whether the TDS quarterly statements 24Q or 26Q or 27Q have been furnished within the due time. Can we do that without checking them? No. So after we go through the entire thing, there are several others also. After we go through all the requirements, when we reach at the last, then we are the best persons who can say that what documents were required to be checked. Whether we have checked it or not, that's a different thing. But which were to be checked to give a report. So after doing that thing, we have got the knowledge that these are the things which are the documents along with the books of account that are to be checked. That's why I am advising that please write 11 small c at the last when we are sure that what books ought to have been checked and that we have checked or not, that's a different thing. But at least we have to show that these examinations have been carried out. I am coming to now serial number wise. Serial number 8. It asks us, indicate the relevant clause of section 44AB. We have to be careful. As I told at the beginning about that 44AB clause E. If we write 44AB clause E, then we must be sure, as I was telling at the beginning, that really this falls in that category or not. So we have to be careful about it. Coming to serial number 9, small a, small b. This is important when we carry out a tax audit in respect of a firm. There we have to write the partners, names of partners, their profit sharing ratios, and also if there is any change. Friends, whether we do it or not, but it must be one of the issues where we must ask for a copy of the latest partnership deed. At least we should see with our own eyes what are the latest profit sharing ratios and who are the partners. Then only we should write 9AB. We may write to the auditee to give it in writing, but still it is our responsibility to check it. Coming to serial number 10, small a, small b. This requires us to report the nature of business or profession. Here you see in bracket it has been asked that if more than one business or profession is carried out during the previous year, nature of every business or profession. We must ask for the latest return of income, say assessment year 1920 as well as 1819. On going through those returns, we can find out that what types of incomes have been offered under the business head. If we see that interest has been included there, or sometimes rent has been included there, then we should ask because maybe that we are not the persons who have been assigned the job of preparing the return. We should ask the concerned entity that what are actually your business? These incomes are being also shown under the business head. Then if he says, no interest I am showing as business because it is also financing is also my business. And after checking the profit and loss account, we must write that also here. This is a very important thing. It is not that just saying the sales figure will write. We must go through the return to find out what types of heads are there which have been used and what are the natures of income that have been included under the head business or even profession. Then 11 small a. This is a question that is asked that whether books of account are prescribed under section 44AA. We are aware that under section 44AA, only books are specifically prescribed for professions. No books are prescribed for carrying on a business. So we should be very careful in answering this. Then 11 small b, list of books and their locations. This thing we must take a letter from the auditee concerned where he should write where the books are maintained so that that can be copied and posted here in the form itself. Then 11C, I have already told that we should write it at the last moment. I have given some examples, but still I am reading it. Certain documents I am mentioning like partnership deed, stock register, fixed assets register, PF register, TDS details like quarterly statement, loan register, IT assessment records returned, shareholding register, details of indirect taxes, and also if SFT return has been filed, that is the specified financial transaction, then copy of that, because that also we have to write. Coming to 13 small a, method of accounting employed. Friends, just write mercantile or just write cash will not be sufficient, but we can't write anything more. So if we find, if we are the auditor, then we have got all the information. But if we are not the auditor, but the tax auditor, then we have to depend upon the audit report. We have to find out from their notes to accounts and significant accounting policies whether there is any qualification as regards mercantile account or cash accounting. In many cases, we find that it is written that mercantile system is being followed, but for bonus or gratuity, it is cash system followed or dividend cash system followed. Please see that, and if we find that something like that is mentioned there, then we should write that in that space given in form number 3CA and 3CB to write against this serial number that accounts have been maintained mercantile under mercantile system with the exceptions in this. That's a must. We must see that there should not be variation in between the taxation tax audit report and the audit report if there be any separate. Then a very important one, I don't want to discuss much on this, but still that is the ICDS requirement. This 13 serial numbers D, E, F. The person who is reporting, don't mind for my saying this thing. The person who is going to report it must be well conversant with the ICDS provisions. If it is a mercantile system of accounting followed, for a company it is always, but if it is not a company, some other, then the ICDS are applicable. And ICDS, that system and the accounting system, there are many variations. One example is the valuation of closing stock and consideration of a deemed profit that percentage, whether performance has been made more than 25%, then we have to consider some portion as the income of the year. So this is one thing. Then also item number 14, serial number 14 small a b, where this valuation of closing stock, these 13 DEF and 14 AB, we have to be very careful about the compliance with ICDS as per section 145 and as regards the closing stock as in accordance with section 145A. Here, the tax auditor is required to write that if there is any necessity of adjustment, what should be the amount. Friends, from my experience, I am telling that there will be some cases where the tax auditor's views and the auditee's views may be different. But as tax auditor, we have to see that ICDS requirements are correctly followed. That's why I'm telling the person who is reporting this tax audit, who is signing this tax audit report, must be very much serious about this ICDS implication. In the assessment, nowadays it will be faceless assessment. So only the machines will work, and the persons whom we don't know, they will check the account, the income tax provisions, whether they have been duly complied with or not. So as tax auditor, we must be sure that on our behalf, there is no mistake there. We must be very clear in our concepts that if there be any adjustment required, particularly two items I am mentioning you, two items, ICDS 3, not 2, sorry, 3, ICDS 3, that is the construction contract, ICDS 4, the revenue recognition, and ICDS 10. This ICDS 10 is for provisions, contingent assets, and liabilities. Regarding these provisions, if one goes through the ICDS 10, he will find all types of provisions have to be reported here. So one has to be very careful and see what details are there and whether the provisions are to be considered as allowable deductions after complying with ICDS requirement, and on the basis of such examination only he can write. I'm giving one example that in regard to provision, it has been mentioned in ICDS 10 that only where there is a certainty of outflow of fund in future for which a liability has been existing on 31st of March are to be considered as allowable provision. So this is the duty of the tax auditor to individually check all these items. And I think I don't want to go into details in ICDS, because if I want to go into it, then half an hour will be taken only for that. If there be any specific question on that issue at the end of my speaking, then I will answer them. Then serial number 15. This is a specific question that if there be any conversion of a capital asset into trade, certain specific answers are to be given. But how the tax auditor will find out whether a conversion has been done or not? Because it will not be written anywhere. So I would advise that last year's accounts, that means the investments and the fixed assets, we should check that whether there has been any transfer entry in between those during this year. If there be any, then we should ask for the details to satisfy ourselves that whether there has occurred any conversion or not. This is a requirement of section 45(2). You must be knowing about it. Then comes 16, small d and small e. This is a very, I should say, tricky question. Here we have been asked that amounts not credited to the profit and loss account being, small d I am talking about, any other item of income. That means if according to the tax auditor, certain item should have been considered as income and credited in the profit and loss account, but has not been credited, then we have to report here. How can we verify? According to me, the only way is this, that check the liabilities account. Whatever has been increased in any liabilities account, that we have to see that is it really a liability account that has been increased because certain receipts have been there which is not being considered as income, is being considered as a capital receipt or something else, but not a revenue income. So we should be sure about it. Then only we should write here nil. And then comes 15 small e. There a question is asked, the capital receipt, if any. Very simple question. What they are asking, that if the concerned auditee assessee has considered certain amount as capital receipt and so not credited to the profit and loss account, whether that has been noted by the tax auditor, he has to mention here. Giving an example, with due respect to our ICI, I say that I have got a reservation in its recommendation made in the tax audit guidelines. Because here they have asked a specific question, capital receipt if any. You know, there can be only receipts of two nature. One is capital, one is revenue. Unless it is revenue, it has to be capital. Share application money, partners introduction of money into capital account, loans receipt, subsidy, if that subsidy is not towards acquisition of any capital asset. These we consider as capital receipts. Here the simple question is, if there be any capital receipts, if any, which has not been credited to the profit and loss account, we have to report. According to me, all types of capital receipt that may be found out in the account should be reported here. This is my view. Whether you agree or not, it's up to you. Coming to serial number 19. I'm skipping.
One second, Bhattacharya, 1 second. You said loan and advance is also a part of capital receipt. So whether loans or advance is also to be reported here under this head?
According to me, it should be. According to me, it should be. Because what they are asking, that amounts not credited to profit and loss account being capital receipt. So they are not asking amount of income not credited to the capital account, profit and loss account. What they are asking, that whether any amount is there which has been received during the year but not credited to the profit and loss account because it happens to be a capital receipt. So I will write that capital receipt is loan, so much is capital receipt. That's why it has not been entered. But my not writing that thing, because you see, what the tax auditor's work is that, so that it is reducing the works of the income tax assessing officer. Only from here, the assessing officer will come to know what type of capital receipts are there, so that he can look into that, whether according to him, anything should have been included as income. This is my view, again I'm telling, which is not the view of ICI. Now it is up to you whether you report it or not. If you don't report, then I would suggest that in 3CA you write that loans and advances being of the nature of capital receipts have not been reported there. That you can write there, so that you know the tax auditor can be saved from any professional negligence. What I want to say, just don't leave it like that. Friends, item number 18, I am not going into details, that is the depreciation and assets, because you know those are specific details that have to be given, and when we put it there, we have to calculate the depreciation. So I suggest that please put these figures in ITR 6 so that the depreciation calculation will be automatically made, and just copy that here. That will save your duty, save your work.
Sir, Bhattacharya, 1 second. But capital receipt has been defined under the Income Tax Act under clause 214. It does not include the loan and advances there.
Capital receipt has not been defined anywhere. Section 2, clause 14 defines capital asset.
Yes.
Please be corrected.
Yes, right.
Section 2, clause 14 defines capital asset, not capital receipt. Nowhere in the Income Tax Act there is any definition of capital receipt. Okay?
Okay.
I'm coming to serial number 20 small b. Here, as tax auditor, we are just to report, not to pass any comment. What the employee's contribution to Provident Fund, ESI, or any welfare fund. Friends, some of you, some of us, I must say, that are giving their views whether this is allowable or not, if there be any delay or not. The tax auditor has not been asked to give his views. Please don't express any view, just write it. When we are going to write in the, if we are preparing the return, then we will decide whether some of the amounts which had been deposited after the due date prescribed under the PF laws or ESI laws, but deposited before the due date of filing of return, whether those should be claimed or not. That's a totally different issue, and the tax auditor does not have any responsibility in giving his views in this. Item number 21, serial number 21. Friends, here you have to hear me very carefully one thing. Up to assessment year 16-17, this serial number 21 used to be written like this without any ABC first, that please furnish the details of amount debited to the profit and loss account, then A, B, C, D, E. That means all the amount that were used to be reported were, if those have been debited to the profit and loss account. You understand what I want to say? Now it is 21A specifically says, please furnish the details of amount debited to the profit and loss account being in the nature of capital, personal, advertisement, expenditure, etc. Not for any B, C, D, E, F like that. There is any mentioning whether debited to the profit and loss account or not. So be careful about it. There is one question whether contingent liability. It is not a question that whether contingent liability has been debited to the profit and loss account. That was up to the assessment year 2016-17. But for 2017-18, it is only for 21 small a they have asked whether debited to the profit and loss account, not for anyone else. That you must keep in mind, because our answering of that will be, these are for disallowances. That's why you have to be very careful when we answer these things. There are several points on this serial number 21. I am going to say one by one. Personal expenditure. Mostly we write nil. Do we check that particular audit is last year's or year before last return of income? Or do we check the latest assessment order of the concerned assessee, and to find out whether they themselves have offered some expenses like 1/10 of motor car expenses, 20% of telephone expenses, some of traveling expenses being personal nature, they themselves are offering for being disallowed. Maybe they have not offered it like that, but in the assessment 10% or 5% something disallowances have been made, but the auditee did not appeal against that. What does that mean? That means the concerned auditee assessee has accepted that. Now in this circumstance, my auditee assessee, my client, has been offering or has been accepting the disallowance. Can I write personal expenses as nil? Even if I write nil, before that, I should write to the concerned auditee. I should take him from writing, where I should write that though you are claiming that there is no personal expenses debited, but from your returns of income and assessment order, I am finding that you are accepting it. Please explain me whether you have accepted it. Maybe that he will say, no, I have accepted it to buy peace of mind or being negligible. Then you write it nil, and then in the observations in Form 3C, just write, the assessee has been accepting this thing because of for buying peace in mind, but according to him, there was no personal expenses. The tax auditor must protect himself for any future problem. Please keep this in mind. Then comes club expenses. You must have noticed in 21 small a, there are two specific questions: expenditure incurred at clubs being entrance fee and subscription, and expenditure incurred at clubs being cost for club services and facilities use. We just report the figures, and what happens? You must have noticed, some of you must have noticed, that what the CBDT, that CPC does, they write that this should have been disallowed. Why they are writing? Because this is coming under the head personal expenses. But maybe in most of the cases, what happens? We find that club expenses, we ask the audit SEC, he says, sir, these are not personal expenses, but these are for the business. If that be so, then we should write here nil. We should write here nil. And then when we are going to write here nil or zero, because figures may be written, only words cannot be written. In the observations, we should write club expenditure of so and so have been seen, but since that are being claimed as having been incurred for the business expenditure, those have not been reported under serial number 21A, so that the tax auditor will be on a safer ground. This is regarding 21 small a I was talking about. Friends, in between one particular serial number I missed, that I just want to bring to your kind attention, that is serial number 19. This is amounts admissible under sections, and there are several sections: 32AC, 32AD, 35, 35AD, 35D, 35DDA, so many things. Many of us just leave it like that. Friends, these are very important. These are those sections according to which at certain times some expenses have been incurred and it is not fully allowed in the year, but 1/5 for 5 years, sometimes 1/10 for 10 years. And what happens? Like VRS, maybe 5 lakh of rupees have been paid. In my profit and loss account, it's 5 lakh, but I shall get the deduction under 35 DDA for 1 lakh. And in the very next year, there will be no debit in the profit and loss account, but still I will get 1 lakh. Same thing for 35D or section 35 also it happens. 100 rupees I have spent, but 125 I will get. So please take care to see that if there be anything like that, those are reported in this serial number 19. Don't leave it blank like that. Then serial number 21 small b. Friends, this 21 small b is relating to defaults of TDS. So this should be answered after we complete serial number 34. Because in serial number 34, we have to give the details of TDS. Naturally, therefrom, it will be found out whether there had been any TDS default, and also about furnishing of TDS quarterly statement. Only after doing that, we shall come back to item number, serial number 21 small b, to write whether there will be any disallowance under section 40 clause A. And when I go to 34, then I will discuss it in detail. Then comes 21 small d. This is a very, I should say, disturbing item for all the tax auditors. Here we have to write that whether the 40 capital A compliances have duly been made. That means more than 10,000 rupees only through account pay checks or through bank channels and all of. Now, how do we check it? This is very important, because if there are vast of transactions, how do we check it? Just taking a declaration from the SEC will not be sufficient. So at least two protections I just want to add. Two protections. One, let us go through the computerized cash book to find out whether there has been any payment more than 10,000 coming under cash column. Number two, since all checks may not be account pay checks but bearer checks, it is not understood from the cash book, we should ask for the bank statement and to find out whether that particular bank state informs that if there be any clearing check, they write CLG, or if there is any bearer check, they write CSH. If that be so, from there we can understand whether there had been any bearer check. Why I am telling it? Because if we write that we have made test checkings and on that basis we have given the view in our observations, and if the assessing officer calls us and asks that if you would have checked the bank statement, you yourself would have found that there were so many CSH entries. Why didn't you inquire for that? So to avoid that type of adverse situation, the tax auditor should at least go through the bank statements to find out whether the clearing checks are there and whether there is any CSH checks other than cash withdrawals which should have been considered for section 40A3 and reported in 21 small d. Friends, 21 small g. This 21 small g, it is mentioned, it is asking us to write that whether, to write not whether, particulars of any liability of a contingent nature. As I told at the beginning, there is no question here. They are asking that if there be any contingent liability debited to the profit and loss account, then only you write, report it. Our institute has given this advice. I have got reservations for that. Since they have not asked, only if it has been debited to report, then if there be any contingent liability notes in the accounts, then we should report that. But we should write along with this so much not debited to the profit and loss account. If we can't write not debited to the profit and loss account there, because if it does not allow, then at least in the observation we will write that contingent liability of so much was not debited to the profit and loss account, so that the assessee, auditee assessee does not fall into any problem. Then comes 21 small h. Question is this: amount of deduction inadmissible in terms of section 14A in respect of expenditure incurred in relation to income which does not form part of total income. The chartered accountant doing the tax audit are not required to write the figures on the basis of Rule 8D. They have to report only if there is any amount that has been found to have been incurred to earn exempt income. How can we find? If there is a new investment made this year or earlier years, we have to ask, we have to inquire whether those investments in shares or mutual funds had been made out of borrowed fund. If that be so, then that interest component will be naturally coming here. Or say demat charges, those will come here unless the particular assessee is involved in share transactions only. But under no circumstance we are to give there what is the figure as per Rule 8D. Rule 8D is a formula. It is not the amount of expenditure that has been incurred. Then comes 21 small I. It says that whether there is any amount inadmissible under proviso to section 36(1) Roman 3. 36(1) Roman 3 says that interest will be allowed for interest paid for amount borrowed for business purposes will be allowed under 36(1)(3). And by proviso it is mentioned that if the borrowing had been done for acquisition of an asset, then the interest for the period just prior to the date of putting to use that particular asset should be disallowed. Here we are to give only that amount, no other disallowance of interest. If there should be any disallowance of interest because of interest on borrowed money paid for acquisition of asset. Then serial number 23. Particulars of payments made to persons specified under section 40A clause 2, subsection 2 clause B. What is being asked is that we should write here all payments made to the persons who are specified in 48(2)B, like the related parties. We have to write. We have not to find out whether there has been any payment of excess amount. I know that CPC had been, now they have stopped, I understand, had been asking the assessee, why didn't you disallow? This is not a particular reporting for amount to be disallowed. it is a particular amount to be reported so that the assessing officer can check that thing. So be careful about it. Then comes serial number 25. Here it is asked any amount of profit chargeable to tax under section 41 and computation thereof. This you know that if any expense had been disallowed earlier and now, any expense had been allowed earlier and now during this year there is certain cessation or waiver, then that particular amount for which deduction had been availed of earlier should be offered for income. It is not that every item that will appear in the profit and loss account as liability is no longer required being written back. It is not that. It is only that particular liabilities which has been written back for which deduction had been made available to us in an earlier assessment year. So before reporting this thing, we should be ascertain of this particular thing. Because I am telling you provision for bad debts. In so many cases, these provisions for bad debts are written back, or provision for certain taxes, or provision for excess bonus. Now these were not allowed in the year the provisions were made. So when you write back those things, those cannot become our income under section 41. So we have to be very careful about it. Then comes a very important serial number 26. This is regarding section 43B. Friends, unfortunately, some of us still do not correctly bifurcate the details that are to be given in this serial number 26. There are two separate portions. The first one is for the relief of the assessee, and the second one is for the The first one says that if at the beginning of the which had not been allowed in earlier year and but paid during the year, that has to be mentioned, then that will be allowed. Keep in mind that payment must have been made before 31st of March, not before the due date of filing of the return. And the second portion says that if there has been a provision made not paid up to 31st of March, but paid, then there are two portions, but paid before the due date of filing of return, those details you have to give in for which deduction will be allowed. And second part, for which payments have not been made, so that will be disallowed. So we have to be very careful about it. Further, in regard to the first portion, for this pre-existing liability for which the assessee is eligible to get deduction on the basis of payments made during the financial year, please keep in mind that unless this is written or this is reported by the tax auditor, invariably the assessing officer will make a disallowance of the claim that may be made in the return. In many cases, I have found out the tax auditors have not reported this correctly, and therefore in the assessment, the claim made in the return was disallowed. Thereafter, there is officially no system of revising tax audit report, but still attempts are being made. So better try to write it correctly in this way so that the assessee does not fall in danger. Item number 27, small b. Particulars of income or expenditure of prior period credited or debited to the profit and loss account. Just because it is written in the profit and loss account as prior period expenditure or income, we should not write here. If you remember, when we are going to do the statutory branch audits of bank, there was a specific clarification. There are only those items which are coming because of omissions or errors committed in earlier years that should be shown as prior period expenditure. But no expense which has been finalized during this year, for which the liability has been finalized during the year, if payment has been made, that should not go for prior period. And both our CA Institute as well as the Income Tax Department, when they earlier issued their clarification, they state that what should be the prior period expenditure income, and they have also mentioned only in a case of error or omission committed in an earlier year, that should be prior period expenditure. So here we should write it in that way Otherwise, the assessee will just lose that deduction. Item number 30C, you know that impossible arrangement that is not to be reported. Item number 31 is regarding the loans. Friends, here one must keep in mind, the tax auditor must keep in mind that the entire loan transactions have to be reported here. It is not that only the loans exceeding 20,000 or not. Entire loan transactions other than the excluded ones that they have specified that have to be reported here carefully. And if there be anything which has not been paid or repaid by way of, which has been received or not repaid by way of account pay check or through bank channel, those have to be separately mentioned. But be sure that the loans beginning of the year and close of the year, those are fully reconciled with the details that the tax auditor is going to report here. Then item number 32, that is details of brought forward loss or depreciation allowance in a particular format they have given. For this, we have to see the latest return of income as well as the assessment orders, if there had been some regular assessment orders, and we should ask the concerned assessee whether there had been any changes made through the assessment which has not been appealed against, because of which they brought forward losses or brought forward unobserved depreciation were to be modified. If there be any, those modifications have to be done by us and then reported here. Then 32 small b, this is in regard to unlisted companies, including the private company. You know that for being eligible to carry forward the unobserved business losses, there is a restriction under section 79, which says that if the shareholding pattern is changed by which 50% of the shareholders who had existed during the year of occurrence of the loan are not continued this year, then there will be no carrying forward of loss. So we have to see that, check whether there has been any shareholding changes by way of transfer or by way of a new issue of shares, and there be any, then we have to check that whether the percentages are within the allowable limits. Then comes serial number 33, chapter 6A. Friends, here I have to say something which may come as surprising to you. Here we are doing a tax audit of the business or profession. How can we get the information about the LICs of that assessee or PPF deposits or donations made? These are not within our areas of checking. So what I suggest, that here we should write only those deductions which have got relationship with the business or professional income, and in our observation we should write that again serial number 33, only deductions relatable to business or professional income have been reported and others have not been considered. We should write here, though I know that in the drop down for this item all those sections come, but I don't know how CBDT expects that a tax auditor will go through the everything of that particular assessee. He is not supposed to. He is to report the tax audit report. He used to make the tax audit report on the basis of business or profession. Then stock details, item number 34. Friends, this item number 34 is a very tedious one for the tax auditor. That is the tedious matter. Friend, there is a column, the columnar table. The first column is tax deduction and collection number. Then comes section. Then comes nature of payment. Then the fourth column is total amount of payment of receipt of the nature in specified column. Then amount required to be deducted and all these things. Now, here it means that wherever there is any tax audit requirement, tax deduction requirement, we have to report all the amounts. But unless all the amounts are reported, And thereafter, out of that amount, how much amount required TDS, we cannot write. But the problem does not arise with, say, rent or salaries. The problem arises with 194C, because maybe there are repairs payment, maybe there are transporters payment, there may be some contract payments, so many payments are there. So we have to check from the profit and loss account ourselves to find out how many items of expenditure there are there which are attracting section 194C and or certain other cases. Here, whatever amounts are being mentioned, we have to see the total of that must tally with the figures that are appearing in the profit and loss account. If there be any difference left, then it will create problem. Number one. Number two, it is not possible for a tax auditor or his or her assistants to check all the transactions during the year. So what should that particular tax auditor do? He or she has to select some samples. I advise for select 15 days of a particular month, and after 6-7 months, another 15 days. Make thorough checking of that, number one. Number two, check all the 24Q and 26Q to find out, according to the auditee assessee, what items of expenditure were attracting TDS. Number three, check the form number 26AS, because at the end of 26AS till now, we are finding that TDS defaults are being mentioned. So take help from there. If there be something reported there, then we can check whether those were to be considered for reporting us. This is a very big area where tax auditors very often find difficulties in reporting. But firstly, selection of sampling should be done, and this selection of sampling should be supported by all forms number 24Q, 20Q, 26Q, 27Q, and also this 26A should be thoroughly checked to find out whether there are any reporting of TDS defaults, and this should be specifically mentioned in the observation in 3CA or 3CB, that how we have carried out this checking of serial number 34, for which the effect will be found out in serial number 21 small b, which I made a reference there. Friends, see, if these tallying, these reconciliations are not correctly made, then problems will arise. Item number, serial number 35, stock details. Naturally, we should, if there be a separate audit report, from there we should take our assistants to write down principal items of stock, the details. From there we will note down here. Serial number 36, if dividend distribution tax has been paid during the financial year 1920, those should be correctly reported here. Then serial number 37, 38, 39. Friends, these are three specific questions, but we have to be very careful. What they are asking, that whether there has been any cost audit, or whether there has been any excise audit, and or whether there has been any service tax audit. If those audits have been carried out, mind it, we just cannot write yes. If there have been some audit, then we have to go through the entire report and then find out what are the disqualification or disagreement, whatever are there, then those have to be reported. So it is not, if there has not been any audit, no problem. But if there has been audit, this is the tax auditor's duty to write down all these information there. Friends, one more thing I missed. Oh yes, serial number 36, capital A. Friends, there is a specific point, whether the assessee has received any amount in the nature of dividend as referred to in subclause E of clause 22 of section 20, section 2. Friends, You know this section 2, clause 22, subclause E, that says that when an unlisted company makes any loan to its shareholder who is holding more than 10% of the shareholding, or to another concern where that particular shareholder is holding more than 20% voting rights, then the amount of loan will be considered as deemed dividend in his hands. Now on, this deemed dividend income, though it will be held in the, though it will be considered as income of the concerned shareholder, but still there will be no taxability there, because you know now this scheme has been changed that the tax will have to be paid at the rate of 30% by the company. So this information we can get only in the case of the individual, because here they are asking whether the assessee has received. That means we have to consider that whether that assessee has received any loan from a company of which he is a shareholder holding more than 20% share, or that assessee is also holding shares of at least 10%, 20% in a company, where he being holder of 10% shares in a company and that company has given loan. It is as per section 222E that if that particular loan transaction is attracting section 222E, then the auditor is required to write here. Keep in mind that tax auditors reporting here will make that particular company also liable, that there will be checking there whether they have deducted tax at source and all these things, because section 194 will be there, one where the TDS sections are there. But now all these have been changed. Now the company has to pay the tax. That is not our lookout. As a tax auditor, we have to just report whether there has been any receipt of that. And one more item, that is serial number 42 small a, whether the assessee is required to furnish statement in form number 61 or 61A. This is regarding the specified financial transaction. You know that the rule 114E we have to mention there, because if any person is liable to tax audit under 44AB, then receipt of cash payment exceeding rupees 2 lakh by sale or any person of goods, that has to be reported here. So we have to inquire whether it was required of that particular assessee whose tax audit we are carrying out had been required to file form number 61A, and if filed, and all these details that we have to mention here. And serial number 44 we need not give, because we have now been asked that this is not applicable this year. Friends, whatever I thought that I would particularly point out as regard form number 3CA, 3CB and 3CD, I have told, though very speedily I told. I'm sorry for that, so that you know the time is maintained. Now I request the host, they can, if any questions have been received, they can say, and I shall try my best to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. I would request if anybody has any questions with respect to any of the clauses mentioned in 3CD or any other specific question, we would first stick to any general questions if you have. We have not received any questions on chat box, so if the persons can unmute themselves and ask one by one.
Sanjay da, sir, very good. Sanjay da, very good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I am just asking regarding the clause number 32.
32.
Yes, sir, serial number 32. In which partnership firm one of the partner retires during this year?
Yes.
And his loss, share of losses of his share. What to do about that?
Your audit is, the tax audit is being done of the firm.
Partnership firm.
And your question, kindly repeat it.
The retiring partner already retired. His loss of the share should be reflected here or not?
See, this is an income tax loss they are asking. If in the income tax assessment of that particular firm, there had been some losses at the end of the assessment year 2019-20 in the name of the firm, which was to be carried forward, that is to be mentioned here. No question of the partner's individual loss.
So that loss will be, the partners cannot carry that loss. That loss should be adjusted by the firm itself, no?
Again, I am telling, a
Yes, sir.
partnership firm being a different entity from the partner for the income tax assessment, that loss will be carried on and that will be set off against the partnership firm's income in future. So you have to report only that type of loss. Here, no question of sharing of any partner's loss. That question does not come. That never comes.
Okay, sir. My question was that the partner's share of loss that he has taken away, that will automatically lost. He cannot claim that because this is to be claimed and adjusted by the partnership fund. His loss will be added here again, in my opinions.
No, see, when you have filed the return of 2019-20, let me
Yes, sir.
tell you, 2019-20, if the partnership, whatever was the business or profession, whatever it is, some loss was determined as per the return, and
Yes,
if
sir.
there had been losses from earlier years, those will automatically be carried forward in the name of the firm. There is
Yes,
no
sir.
question whether a partner has retired or not.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Any other?
Sir, I have a question with respect to point number 34C, wherein
Yes.
we are supposed to report the interest liability which we are supposed to pay when TDS has been short deducted or has been less deducted. Generally, as you said, that we should look upon 26A statement to find out if there is any default. Second cheat, sir, generally we find that the last quarter, Jan, Feb, March returns, in which interest liability is there and has been also been paid by the SSC, but that has been reported in the profit and loss account of the next financial year, since the returns and payments are all being made after 31st March.
Yes.
So, are we supposed to report those figures which are not reported in PL account in our tax audit report over here? Because
Yes.
generally SSC does not make any provision for those interests because those are being debited to PL account as and when they are paid.
Yes, absolutely correct. Because it covers the TDS compliances for the financial year 2019-20. You have to write here the details. It is whether that has been debited or debited to the profit and loss account or not, that the assessing officer himself will inquire. We are not to say whatever we are writing only in respect of the profit and loss account. Here, this is a separate thing only for the TDS. Naturally, we'll write here whatever interest was payable and whether he has paid it. Maybe he has paid it now, because until and unless that interest is paid, you must be knowing it. Until and unless that interest is paid, that form number 26Q that may be filed will be invalid. So when that fourth quarter 26Q has been filed, we have to write here, and naturally that interest must have been paid. It cannot be that if interest has not been, it cannot be, I'm telling you that's a serious default. Without paying the interest, if somebody has filed a 26Q, it is invalid.
So normally
Whether
the
there
return
is
gets
a
filed.
liability,
Return
here
gets
the
filed
tax auditor has to find out whether there was a liability and whether that has been paid. So we have to write when it has been paid. Also, that has to be mentioned in the
reported. Yeah,
third
it has to
column.
be reported. It has to be reported, sir.
Yes.
Generally, we find that the returns are being deposited, defaults are there, but that has not been paid. So we should report that amount and we should say that this amount has not been paid till date.
Yes, because you see, amount paid out of column along with date of payment, you have to show 0.
Right.
But it is the duty of the tax auditor to determine what interest should have been paid. But naturally, as I am telling you, this will only put the assessee in a danger which he should deserve also, that his filing of form number 26Q will be invalid, and so part day 200 rupees or 100 rupees, whatever penalty will accrue on him.
Right, sir.
Yes.
Sir, regarding, sir, one more question, sir.
Yes.
Sir, regarding this, if we can get some management letter from the department, from the directors or the partners, regarding all this, you were told that to be secured by the auditor, we should get some written letters from the managements. So can we get one compounded letter, all in one management representation letter that will
Yes,
serve the
of
purpose?
course. Yes, of course. Whatever points are there, like, indirect taxes registration,
Yes, sir.
locations where the books of accounts are maintained, and
Correct.
that he has not paid any money, he has not incurred any expenditure on of personal nature. He has not incurred any expenditure towards earning of exempted income. He has not taken any loan
Correct.
with, other than by way of account paycheck. You can
Yes,
take
sir.
as many as, but that will be only your mental satisfaction. Let me tell you, it is only a mental satisfaction.
Then
Earlier there was a requirement regarding 48(3) to take a letter, but that letter has not been there. But for our mental satisfaction, we can write, so that in future, if we are charged, we can say at least to the assessee that it is because of you I am now suffering.
correct. But legally it is valid not, sir. Legally it is not valid.
No, it has got no value, because you see, as I was telling in the beginning, we are certifying what is true and correct.
Correct, sir. Correct.
I mind it. We are not certifying what is true and fair.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When we are telling something, what particulars are given are correct, that means we are assuring that it is correct.
Yes, sir.
And
Okay,
another
sir.
point also, let me tell you,
Yes, sir.
this is also, this is one of the views, this is my view, which is not supported by many of our chartered accountants. We are to upload this form 3CA, 3CD or 3CB, 3CD ourselves, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Some of us separately issue a manual 3CA, 3CD that can have no value. Please
Correct.
keep in mind, we as chartered accountant cannot certify two types of forms. Only thing what we do, I myself do, after I upload the form and approval is made, then I take out printout and give it to the concerned assessee, and if he insists, then I put my signature there. 2-3 copies I give. But never I give any manual copy.
Correct, sir.
Because
Correct.
as per rule 12, we are to upload this in the form, and there are changes. I am telling you, there are certain variations in the form that are coming in the income tax rules book and the form that is on online. Why should I take the responsibility of signing two forms? I
Correct,
should not. Number one. Number two, sometimes we think that getting a signature by the assessee concerned on 3CD will be helpful for us. No, it
Yes,
has
sir.
got no value. Is there any place for putting his signature?
No, sir.
So
But we are
these
just-
are something which are not. If the assessee asks, why are you asking me to sign on this? You don't have any answer. But you
Correct.
can always ask by a separate letter, this replies you give me.
Correct, sir. Correct. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Bhattacharya, you are told that tax audit report cannot be revised.
Huh?
You have said that tax audit reports cannot be revised,
Yes.
but it is being revised, it is being accepted also.
I am telling you, I told you have missed one word. That officially there is no provision for revising.
Okay.
I know that when we upload, there is an option original or revised.
Yes.
And people take help of that and file and department accepts it. That is well and good.
Yes.
But nobody can say for sure that that will be accepted. Because our institute also has given a guideline that when a revision can be done. But let me tell you, in the form that original and revised, what I understand by that after we upload it, that date is considered as the date of furnishing. But thereafter, the assessee has to approve it. If the assessee disapproves it, then a new form is to be uploaded. I think that is the reason why this option is given original or revised, not the revised as we understand. Because you see, in the Income Tax Act, there are specific provisions where revisions can be made, like in return, like in TDS quarterly statements, all these are there. But in tax audit report or any other report, there does not appear any provision for revision. But if we do, and it is accepted by the income tax department, we can always take help. That's why I tell, officially there is no provision.
Okay.
Sanjay sir, 3 days ahead, we had an opportunity to interact with CBDT Bangalore, who is processing our returns through EIRC. We had a meeting on 9th. There, we had discussed one issue with Dr. Matthews, who was basically chairing the session with respect to CBDT Bangalore, who were processing the returns. The matter regarding point number 20, subclause B, wherein a lot of additions are being made by CPC while processing the return with respect to contribution received from employees for various funds as referred to section 36(1)(5)(a), where we are supposed to report the due date of payment and the actual amount paid, wherein generally we are reporting the due date to be the date of the respective PF or ESI funds. One was the viewpoint which came up, which was not clearly spelled by CBDT, but he said that we have mentioned in the form the due dates. Nothing is being mentioned with respect to the due date of the respective fund or the due date as per the Income Tax Act. Income Tax Act has given us a blanket provision that we can deposit it before the return filing date of 139(1). So is it possible that we write the due dates to be the return filing dates instead of the respective funds date, so that the additions which are coming up electronically through CBDT while processing does not creep up? Will be a tax auditor can do the same.
Let me tell you, we have to go through the actual section. See, section overrides the rules. It is not that the rules override the section.
Okay.
Section 36(1)(5)(a), if you want, I can read out that portion. Should I? I am
Yes.
just reading out. You will come to know why this problem is arising. The definition of due date here, it is clearly written. I am reading out. For the purpose of this clause, due date means the date by which the assessee is required as an employer to credit an employee's contribution to the employee's account in the relevant fund under any act, rule, order, or notification issued thereunder or under any standing order, award, contract, or service or otherwise. Naturally, when a reference is made under section 36(1)(5)(a) in serial number 20 small b, there this due date means the due date as defined in the Income Tax Act. There cannot be any doubt about it. But one more thing I am telling you, this is from my personal experience, as you have asked, that's why. In the case of National Insurance Company, I fought before the tribunal with one issue. There were some delays in depositing the money, but I showed them that the credits in the the employees' accounts had been made within this due date. And I told the section requires crediting the employee's account, not depositing the money in the bank. You follow what I want to say?
But sir, generally in all the SSC's case, whenever you deposit the amount, only at that point of time the employee's account is credited.
Not in all cases. I am telling you, there are certain very big cases I have seen. That's why I give the example. I name it National Insurance. What they do, they give ad hoc amounts to the trust, to the fund. They make ad hoc amounts, and on the basis of their details, all the accounts of the concerned employees are credited on a particular day, on the day of the salary. And so the disallowance that was made by the department was withdrawn, was deleted by the tribunal. I had to give the proof because the section never wants deposit. But if you go through section 36(1), other section, everywhere it is the question of payment. But only in 36(1)(5)(a), it is the question of crediting the employee's account. I pointed out to the honorable members of the tribunal and they agreed with my views.
Sir, just to re-ask my
means-
question once again, what I was asking is basically just to avoid these additions being made while processing of the returns. Is it possible we write the due dates to be the return filing date 139(1)
No,
and we
no.
put up a remark
No, I would say that you cannot, because due date for payment they are mentioning. Due date for payment, there is no due date for payment as per the Income Tax Act for the return. Due date for payment is there only in section 36(1)(5)(a). So if a chartered accountant writes that thing, he may be held professionally negligible. Professional neglect will be charged against him. There is a possibility. So I would never suggest that to be done.
Okay, sir.
You
But in
have
such-
to fight it in the court, in the tribunal.
So
That
it will-
because of some Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court decision or High Court decision, even for the employees' contributions also it has to be allowed and all these things. But not in this tax audit report. The chartered accountant working as a tax auditor should not take that responsibility on his shoulder. This is my advice.
Actually, it was accepted by the CBDT also, but they said that since we are asking a due date and the auditor is saying that the due date is this date and the deposit has been made after that date, so accordingly, based on the auditor's judgment, we have to disallow it.
It
It
has
is
to
allowed
be
in
because
Income Tax Act as per 139(1). So indirectly, he said that to bring a blanket to the SSC, you can put down 139(1), but it did not spell it out clearly that you should mention it.
I have told you.
Because of the
here
reason I said,
heading
sir.
is this: details of contribution received from employees for various funds as referred to in section 36(1)(5)(a). And thereafter, when they are writing due date for payment, this due date must be as per that particular section. There is no scope of writing the other. This is my view, and I will suggest that don't take that risk.
Okay, sir.
Is anything else?
Yes, friends, if anybody has question, they can put forward.
Sir, regarding union date,
Yes. 15 days.
15 days is it presently, but it may chances are extension for 1 month.
I can't say that. The
Because-
institute can only say.
Yeah.
How can I say? But as far as I know, up to 31st of December, it was extended up to 30 days. But with effect from 1st January, the old
Yes, sir.
situation has come. So whatever your tax audit report date, it must be within 15 days that the UDIN should be generated. But
Correct,
I
sir.
would suggest that if UDIN can be generated on the same days, then you can write it in the tax audit report itself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Very much, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
So
I have
regarding
one
point
question.
number 4, wherein we have to report all the registrations under indirect taxes. So if just for an general query, that if any person has different registrations for different states for GST, all those needs to be required to be mentioned. Plus, if he is having any import-export licenses for custom duty, whether that also need to be reported. Whether professional tax or local taxes, whether they are considered to be indirect tax, and whether they are also to be reported over here, sir.
Yes, any indirect tax. It may be the state VAT. If there is any still there, if there is any state profession tax, that has to be reported. I give, in my case, in my farm's case, the profession tax registration.
The Shop and
But
Establishment
that
Act,
is also
sir.
indirect tax.
So regarding Shop and Establishment Act, because
Everything. If there
Everything
be a
has to be
registration number allotted, we have to give it.
Okay, so all those are considered to be indirect tax, apart
Yes.
from direct tax.
There is only one direct tax now, that is income tax. All
Yeah.
are indirect.
All are indirect taxes. So there was a question in the chat box with respect to turnover. Prasen Pal has been asked, one individual having 15 crores of turnover from stock market in equity shares, short term, long term, and intraday, is he liable to get his accounts audited under 44AB?
If he says the turnover is 15 crore, then naturally it is.
This
How the
includes
turnover has
everything,
been
sir.
computed, that I don't know.
So turnover will be from sales only, sir, from sale of equity shares.
If in my sales account, in my profit and loss account, I show turnover of 15 crores, how can there be any doubt?
Got your point, sir. Because he has also mentioned short term, long term, and intraday. So if he has mentioned short term and long term, then he is not showing as a profit and loss account, but as a capital gain. So in
If
that
it
scenario,
is
I
shown
don't think
as a
turnover
capital
will
gain,
go.
no, let me tell you. If he shows himself as investor, if he shows that it is only short-term capital gain or long-term capital gains, but he is not showing in the accounts as his turnover, then there is no question of tax audit. Tax audit comes only if the business turnover is more than that.
So it's the nature in which he has disclosed the return.
Naturally, he has to.
And if in
So, sir,
assessment-
he has the discretion to categorize that particular turnover under capital gains also. I mean, based on the intention of investment.
See, question is that's a different issue, but still, since you have raised, there are certain things, certain criteria that have to be checked. If a
Okay.
person is considered as carrying on a business in shares, naturally that will be termed as business income. But if he is not accepting that, if he is fighting, if he is saying, no, it is my investment, I have not taken any borrowing, and I am showing in my balance sheet only as investment, in my profit and loss account, I am showing his profits on sale of shares, not as my sale profit or gain, not like, you know, the sales and purchases, but shows as profit on sale of shares like that, then he can fight it out. But let's see what has happened in his income tax assessments in the earlier years. If he has accepted that thing, then he can't say anything. But if he has not accepted and fighting in the appeal, then he should continue with it.
Okay, okay. Got it, sir. Thank you so much.
But Bhattacharya, hello.
Yes,
But you said that every receipt has to be accounted for to determine the total turnover.
Every?
receipt- total receipt has to be accounted for to determine the total turnover, no? Every
No.
type of receipt is to be taken into account, no?
you have to consider, are you considered for the relaxation given from this year?
Yes.
For the relaxation this year, you have to consider all receipts.
It means
All
the-
receipts, not business receipts.
It means
All
the capital-
receipts.
It means
You
the
have to
sale
see
of
that
shares.
whether all receipts, whatever has come. I'm giving an example. Say one particular person, his business turnover is 4 crore of rupees. His total receipts during the year, including loans, advances, any share sale or anything, is 10 crore of rupees. And it is found out that he has received in cash less than 50,000 rupees. Less than 5% of that. And also he has paid by cash less than 5% of the total payment. Then in his case, the turnover threshold will be considered as 5 crore rupees. The threshold of that 5 crore is for business. But to find out whether relaxation will be, he will be eligible for the relaxation, his total receipts and total payments during the year have to be found out, and then to compute whether more than 5% in receipts and also more than 5% in payments had been made in cash or not. If it is not made in cash, both the cases, then up to 5 crore, there is no requirement of tax audit.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
Hello, sir. In point number 26, part B, in the section of section 43B, not paid on or before the aforesaid date, sir, is GST on RCM basis has to be reported over here, sir. Sir, can we report GST on RCM?
See, GST that you are paying is a tax, is of the nature of a tax.
Yes, sir.
Naturally, the deduction of that tax is as per section 43B.
43B. But sir, if we have not debited any expense in the PL account, so how can we disallow it? Because if we report anything here, then that gets automatically disallowed. That the entire amount gets disallowed. So if we put anything here, so that amount, because sir, last year one of my SSE had 16 lakhs of RCM payment, which he had made after the due date. So the assessing officer had disallowed the entire amount, but after that I had to issue a letter that the expense was not debited in PL. So how can that amount be disallowed? Something which has not been debited in PL.
I am telling you two things you have to.
Yes, sir.
You have to see it differently. One is regarding the GST collected and not paid, and another is the RCM GST.
Yes, sir.
GST collected and not paid will be disallowed.
Yes, sir.
But GST which you are paying from your pocket and you have not debited to the profit and loss account, there is no question
Yes.
of disallowance here. But when you will make the payment, then you will
Yes.
claim it under 43B.
But sir, the assessing officer had said that the GST on RCM, since it was reported in this point, has to be disallowed. And sir, in
That
case,
was the tax auditor's mistake.
okay, okay,
See, let me clarify one thing. In case of tax liabilities, sales tax, VAT, GST, whatever it is, when many of us think that since there is no entry made in the profit and loss account, why should I get disallowed? Question
Yes.
is not that. These collections are to be deemed to be income in your hand, and that's why that disallowances are made. But the point that you are raising, it's a RCM GST. That means
Yes, sir.
nothing has gone there. It is an additional liability of mine. When I will make the payment, naturally I will claim it on the basis of 43B. That means
Yes, sir.
actual payment will be claimed. There is no scope of the tax auditor should not have reported this in this
Reported.
43B
Okay, sir.
in item
Okay.
number 26.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
See what did I am not starting with due respect intentionally. What the assessing officer does, don't think that is the Bible.
Generally, sir, in this case, generally we find that service tax has been collected by SSC in huge amounts, but those are not being deposited to the government authorities. And the SSC claims that since they are not putting up in debit to profit and loss account, so they are not claiming any expenditure. So why the disallowance should come in?
It
But
will be disallowed.
yeah, AO has a consideration that since this has been collected and not paid, it becomes the
Correct.
nature of income, as you said.
Yes.
And since they have not shown it as an income, so it is being disallowed, maybe not in the form of expenditure, but as an income which has not been shown under 43B.
But they will just make a disallowance of it because you see that money has come to my account which I was supposed to deposit. I have not deposited, so they will disallow it, and when I will make the payment, naturally the deduction I will be allowed.
I will be allowed. Right, sir. Friends, any more questions from anybody? I think everything is answered.
Yes, sir, I have a question.
Yeah, please, Saroj.
Sir, in small business, those who are carrying on proprietorship business, it is normally seen that we consider the audit based on their business accounts, and we don't normally look into their personal balance sheets. In many small businesses, it is found and seen that they accept loans in their personal file and make it investment in the business. So are we in a compulsion requirement to report and check the personal accounts for reporting those loans received by the SSEs?
See, we are auditing the business account. There is no doubt about it. But if some amount is put there, naturally we are supposed to ask him what are the sources, how he is showing in the business, how he is showing that receipt in his business account. Is it being shown that it has been provided by the proprietor out of his own account?
So normally, sir, capital introduction is shown. We don't go deep into it about the sources and all.
Yes.
We only see that the capital investment is there.
You will show there only. But let me tell you one thing. If there has been a receipt of loan, these restrictions on loans as per section 269 SS or repayment by 269T, nowhere it is mentioned that this which is only related to business that are to be reported. But in our tax audit report, we are not to report that. Here we are to report only which is coming to us. That means which are being reflected in the profit and loss account and balance sheet that we are checking. So according to me, we are not to write about that personal account.
So
To us, it is a proprietorship's own source that he has given. Whether he has received it in a loan or not, that is not to be taken care of by us as the tax auditor.
So, sir, do you think it will be safe part on us to restrict in this CCA reporting that the audit has been restricted to the business concern only and not the personal balance sheets, etc.? Do you think we should write there for our safety?
I am telling you, normally when we are making the audit, tax audit, it is of the assessee concerned. But when you are reporting, we are attaching the balance sheet and profit and loss account of the business only. To add the to add our protection, we can give an observation that in preparing this report, we have not taken consideration of his transactions not reported in the his personal transactions not reported in the business accounts.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
But sir, one view is that, sir, the loan taken by the proprietor and invested in the business, it takes also TDS liability, sir. So TDS return is filed from the proprietorship concern. So both the loan in the name of the proprietor itself and in the name of the proprietorship concern, those attract TDS. So by virtue of that TDS, we can find it out that it is, we have to report.
But let me ask you a question. If
Yes, sir.
interest on TDS has been shown in the business account, naturally the question will come where the loan is shown.
No, he has just taken the loan in the proprietor's individual name.
No, but
Very-
why? You see,
in his
if
personal
the
balance sheet.
interest is debited, if the interest is debited to the profit and loss account, then naturally as the auditor also, it should be asked, where the loan is shown. Loan is not shown, how the interest can be debited here?
No, sir, interest is not debited in the business account.
Then
It is
how you are telling that TDS is being done from the publisher concern?
the TDS to be deducted in both the same number, or the TDS number is the same. So he has to deduct the TDS.
So naturally that will be reported in your serial number 34 of the tax audit report.
Yes, sir.
And so naturally there will be an anomaly.
So generally,
And
it happens.
you have to explain to the assessee that this has to be brought here.
Oh,
So
okay,
generally,
okay.
it happens the SSC claims
Okay,
it
sir.
in his own personal account only. The interest, if he debits anything, he debits it in his own personal account and does not claim it as a business expenditure.
So that's okay. But this TDS amount, where it is reflected, if there is any TDS, then he has to. Because you see, if a person is under tax audit, he has the responsibility of deducting tax at source from everything.
Yeah, correct, sir.
So one has to keep that in mind.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank
Naveen ji,
you.
you are saying something?
Sir, another question to my mind. An SSC is having two businesses, one with tax audit coverage with huge turnover, and the other business which is on the eve of closure and having negligible turnover, etc. So is tax audit required for both the business, or can we do the running big one?
No,
and
no,
do that?
no. Both the businesses are to be covered in the tax audit report.
Okay, sir. And can we take an option that the small business we offer income under section presumptive taxation?
No,
And
it
so
is, see, the tax audit limit is considered on the basis of a particular assessee. If he has got 10 businesses, all 10 businesses are to be considered and the gross turnover has to be mentioned. But in the observations column, that detail should be given.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
So, sir, in this case, then we can't have an SSC having a transport business as well as a trading business. If he wants, he is having less than 10 goods carriages. So, if he wants to opt for 44 ADE, presumptive taxation for his transport business, and he goes for a normal tax audit for his trading business, can't
There
he?
is a specific exclusion for 44 AE that in case of his, in the case of for determination whether tax audit is required, that transport business will be taken out.
Okay.
So there is no question of that. You have to see whether there is any expressed exclusion. One cannot assume the exclusion.
Correct, sir. Got your point.
Anything else?
I think all the questions have been answered. Should we wrap up the session, Saroji?
Yes,
Should we
sir.
wrap up the
Yes, sir.
session, Sanjay ji?
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Okay, from my end, it is okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Session.
So I'll just sum up the things. today on the tax audit session, as deliberated by CA Sanjay Bhattacharya ji, the key takeaway points which I find it very much necessary that generally the other in our audit report, we generally avoid putting up anything in the other section. As suggested by Sanjay sir, we should not overlook that others column, and anything which we want to report as a tax auditor, we should report over there. Even point wise or clause wise replies in which we have gone through and we have reported something which is, for example, in point number 16D, as said by Sanjay ji, that loans and advances and other capital receipts which has not forming part of revenue and not been debited to profit and loss account, we should give a blanket clause over there that since those were not forming part of profit and loss account has not been reported in point number 16D. Similarly, similar points, point-wise replies where any remarks which we want to give, we can put up in the other section. Uh, Coming to one more point, 11C, wherein we generally write all the books of accounts which we have verified, but we don't write anything with respect to the registers which we have seen. For example, while reporting,
तो वो देवाशीष दा कर रहा है.
for example, while reporting the TDS return, point number 34, the 36 contributions which you have received from the employees, we have checked from PF registers. The shareholding pattern for section 79, we have to check ROC registers. So all those registers should also be mentioned in point number 11C, and as said, it should be compiled at the last once we have completed our tax audit, so that we can analyze which registers we have seen and we can put up all those registers over there. Coming to that personal expenses and club expenses, also proper clarification should be obtained from the clients. And with respect to deduction of chapter 6A, we should restrict ourselves to specific deductions which we have claimed with respect to business profession and not with respect to individual capacity deductions which the SSC has taken. There are a lot more points by point discussions which was being made, which was quite helpful. I request Sri Sarosh Swaikar ji to kindly offer a formal vote of thanks to Sanjay Bhattacharya ji on behalf of all the participants as well as Views Exchange. Over to you, Sarosh ji.
Thank you, Naveen. I, on behalf of our study circle Views Exchange and all the present participants present here, thanks Sri Sanjay sir on his detailed and lucid mannered explanations with respect to various clauses of tax audit report, which is very helpful for all of us. He has explained and answered to all the queries in our minds to our satisfaction. He has shared his opinion also in various points where we had doubts. I thank him once again. I also thank to all the participants. I also thank our convener Naveen ji, our immediate past presidents, Jhawar ji, and all others present here. Thank you everybody, with my bottom and heartfelt thanks to everybody. Thank you so much.
Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. It was a wonderful session, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.